Hi, Mike Rubel here, coming from YouTube channel Arthur Rubel. And this is the fourth in my series of Letters from the Edge, of which there are 30. And they're all different. So none of them will bore you, and some of them will touch your soul. This is about a divorcee that is trying to find her heart and her soul. And she does so by going up to a small town in the Sierra Nevadas. It goes something like this. I drove to my ex-husband's home and parked in the driveway. He was inside with his new girlfriend, Julie. Through the window, I could see her as she headed through the kitchen out to the backyard. She didn't want to get in the mix with my ex-husband and me, so as we traded the kids for the weekend. I was past caring for him at this point, except for the impact it might have on my two kids, Ryan and Carol, 12 and 9, who were in the back seat waiting for me to give them the okay to get out of the car. Neither of them were happy to join their father and the new girlfriend, but it was a deal we made after the divorce. They knew their father loved them, and he would try to make it fun for them over the next few days, at least I hoped. Okay, kids, grab your stuff and I'll walk you to the door. I'm sure your father has some lots of good things planned for you. I watched Jeff as he opened the door and walked out on the front porch. He was angry after our divorce, but after 2 years, I thought he might mellow out a little. He'd gone on with his life while I had permanent custody of the kids with an occasional visitation, as we were doing now. I felt it was best for them to see their father and try to spend some quality time with him despite the acrimony. Hello, Jeff. Was that your new lady friend I saw heading out to the backyard? I hope you have some fun things for the kids to do and don't spend time watching a football game or some other dumb TV show. Don't worry, he said. We've got some nice things to do, and I promise not to drink while they're here. With a touch of anger in his voice, he said, you need to give me a chance to make it up to them. By the way, where are you going in case I need to get a hold of you? Well, I'm taking a trip to a small town in the Sierra Nevada mountains that I read about in a magazine. Look, it's only for one night. I have my cell phone always turned on. I watched as the kids walked up behind me with their backpacks. I gave them both a big hug and watched as they slowly walked into the house as if they were going to prison. They remembered the fights and the drinking, all very unpleasant and hurtful. As I drove away with a sense of foreboding, but this was going to be the culmination of a trip I've been planning for the last few months. I needed a break from everything job, worries about the kids, and the effect of our divorce on them and my own psyche. They knew the reasons for the divorce, and my son Ryan would always hold my hand and say, "It's all right, Mom," that he would be there for me if I ever needed anything. I smiled, thinking of his kindness and maturity at such a young age. Carol, on the other hand, really loved her dad, but was too young at the time to really understand the problems we were having. In time she'd be okay, I thought, or maybe hoped and prayed. The trip was uneventful. I moved easily without much traffic from the valley to the base of the mountains. My GPS device said prepare to turn left in a half a mile. Wonderful gadgets, so I'd never get lost again. I saw the bridges across the river and a sign with an arrow that said Clinton, 4 miles. The bridge abutment said 1936, and it looked like it had managed to survive all these years in fine, if not old, condition. Soon I arrived in the town that looked just like the photos in the magazine. One main street with shops and restaurants, and a couple of hotels lining both sides, with an occasional office thrown in for good measure. I spotted my hotel and parked on the street in front. Since they told me I couldn't check in until afternoon, I decided to go across the street and explore a little before I unpacked. There was a boardwalk of old timbers instead of a concrete sidewalk that was about 3 feet above the street. It was like going back in time before autos, when horses and buggies tied up along the dirt road. One of the shops had gifts and other sundry items, along with a real soda fountain with chintz floor, the raised round seats, and old advertisements adorning the walls. As I approached the front of the store, I noticed an older man sitting on the bench on the boardwalk. He was whittling a piece of wood and seemingly content in his pastime. He smiled, and I found myself smiling back and saying, "Hello, you look content." He says, "I am." A good way to spend part of the day. Peaceful up here, you know. You must be from the valley, I can tell from your license plate. I smiled and said, very observant of you. It's nice to get out of the heat and be close to the mountains. I've never been here before and always wanted to come to Clinton and spend some time. Well, this is a great little town. Bunch of really nice folks living here, and not much traffic except for folks like yourself who come here to get away or to find something in their lives. I guess it's the latter for me, I said. Things are pretty hectic at home, and this was a chance for some peace and quiet, read a book, and just relax. Look, I'm going to get a cup of coffee and stretch my legs after the trip. Can I join you on the bench for a bit? And you can tell me about your town. By the way, my name's Karen. Can I buy you a cup of coffee as well? Why, that's very nice of you. And yes, I'd love to have you sit a spell with me. And I take my coffee with a little cream and that natural sugar if they have it. And folks here call me Jason. Nice to meet you, he smiled. I walked inside and returned shortly with our coffees and sat down on the wooden bench. I didn't say anything as he thanked me, just smiled and looked out on the street and what it would be like to live here. Not that I would, but just wondered. Sitting with him seemed the right thing to do. There was a peaceful, almost fatherly demeanor about the old man that made me feel very comfortable. He had stopped whittling and turned to me, and he says, you look very stressed. Is this the first trip away from the hassle of everyday life? Looks to me that this could be a restful and insightful adventure for you. I've lived here about 60 years. I came up from Stockton when I was just a young man and worked in the gold mines for 35 years until they all shut down. Then did a bunch of odd jobs, mechanic, carpenter, road maintenance, and so on, just keeping busy and putting food on the table for my wife Sadie and myself. Is she still around? I asked, and no, she passed away about 10 years ago. I've been alone ever since. Well, never really alone. I have the mountains, and that gives me strength, and the smell of the fir trees in the air and sound of the creek behind the town. Those keep me company all the time. They're like my church, all around me, giving me peace in my heart and soul. I thought about this statement and felt a little guilty because I really lost faith after the divorce. Too much work and the kids' sports and other activities took so much time. I guess church has taken a back seat to my family these past 4 years, I'm sorry to say. No matter, he said, you don't need a building to find church. It's in the air, the mountains, the ocean, and everything that's good in life. You just need to find it in your heart, and when you do, align it with your soul. There must be peace inside you to fulfill your own destiny. Nobody else can do that for you. It has to be written within you, with your spirit. You have to look hard, though, but if you do, you'll find it. Don't get distracted by negative things or people. They drag you away from peace and tranquility in your life. I know you're right, I said. It just is a hard time with the divorce and kids. I was quiet for a while, thinking of Jeff and our problems, plus one of my coworkers who's been after me to date him. I didn't need the distraction right now, but it would be nice to have someone around that could do some heavy lifting and then enjoy a movie or maybe a walk in the park. As if he was reading my mind, he says, finding a soulmate's hard. They're far and few between. If you find one true love in your life, you're lucky. Sure, there are plenty of guys who you think would be great. Most of the time, it turns out badly. I laughed out loud and said, you must be psychic, because that's the way I felt with Jeff, and things didn't turn out very well. Actually, there's a fellow at work that wants me to go out with him, but there's just no chemistry there. Maybe it's just me. No, he says, you're just fine. I can tell the way you talk and sense your search for the real key to life. It must come from within, not without. God never leaves us alone. He's always there when we need him, and we need him all the time. No matter what your faith, remember the real church is inside you. We sat in silence for a while and just looked out on the street. I looked at my watch and said, look, I've really enjoyed talking to you, Jason, but I have to check into the hotel. I hope you whittle something really pretty from that piece of wood you have. Yep, he said, I look in the woods for a piece like this, and then when I whittle it, it pretty much tells me what it wants to look like when I'm through. Nature has a way of doing what it wants. Nothing we can do can stop that. I guess you're right. Mother Nature does get her way. You take care now, and thanks for the time. It's helped me to get little things sorted out in my mind. Glad I could help just a little bit, Karen. Remember to always look inside, and you'll find yourself. And thanks again for the cup of coffee. I walked across the street and entered the hotel lobby. A lady heard the door clang open and came out of the office. You must be Karen, she asked. I saw you across the street and figured it was you. Plus, I saw the license on your car. Yes, I said. I enjoyed a nice chat with an older man sitting on the bench named Jason. You must know him. What? I didn't see anyone. I thought you were talking on one of those newfangled phones with the ear thing and a little microphone around your neck. That's what I thought you were doing over there on the bench. Surely you saw him, but don't you know Jason? He must be 80 years old and said he lived here for almost 60 years. He said his wife was named Sadie, but she passed away 10 years ago. Well, the only Jason I know, she said, was the one that works in the lumberyard back at the end of town, and the other one works at the bank. You know, come to think of it, there was a terrible crash on the bridge outside of town about 10 years ago during a severe snowstorm. Apparently, the car slid off the ice and plunged into the river, which was flooding at the time. They found the car and two folks in it when the river went down in the spring. If I'm not mistaken, one of them was named Sadie. I remember because it's a different name, and it kind of stuck in my head at the time. You know, I can call the firehouse, and they'll remember the wreck. First, let's check you in. I was stunned at the news and the fact that she didn't see anybody on the bench with me. Maybe I'm losing it. I left my credit card and license and walked to the window to look out at the bench. I remember there were a bunch of shavings on the walk, but now it was sparkling clean. Shaking my head, I finished checking in and went to my room. It was lovely with an overstuffed queen-size bed, and the duvet matched the fabric on the large armchair in the corner. Lucky my room was at the end of the hall and had windows on both sides, one overlooking the street and the other one looking out at the woods behind the hotel. I unpacked, still shaking my head, and wondered if I was in some kind of time warp thing like we used to watch on TV. Well, I went back to to the lobby to inquire about a good place to eat when the lady came rushing out of the office to say that the fire guys remembered the accident and it was Sadie. But the other person in the car was a man called Jason McGuire. They both died in the wreck. My knees became rubbery and I found a chair to sit down for a moment. She saw my face and put her hand on my shoulder in a soothing way. Sometimes it just happened for no reason. Or maybe there was a good reason. I sat for a moment and then slowly walked half a block to the local restaurant. I decided to have a glass of local wine and then ate the special for the evening, which was a lightly breaded chicken breast cooked with lemon and capers. I sat for a while and then returned to my room. After a hot shower, I tiled off and dressed for bed, and before getting in, opened a window that faced the woods. Sure enough, the room filled with a clean, fresh air from outside with the scent of fir trees and the gurgling sounds of the creek that were running behind the hotel about 50 yards away in a small canyon. The bed was soft and enveloped my body as if it were a cloud. I felt myself sinking into the soft bedding, and the stress of my life just seemed to melt away. I listened to the sounds from outside and smelled the air. Jason was right. This was the peaceful place I needed right now. I smiled at the conversation with Jason, real or not. He made me see that the most precious thing for me was to find me and align my heart and soul to be truly one with myself. Well, I slept like a baby and had dreams that made me feel wonderful, although I can't remember them now. Late in the morning, I went downstairs and checked out. She gave me a funny look as I walked out the door. I didn't care what she thought. Jason was real for me. I grabbed a quick coffee and a scone from the soda fountain and drove out of town. At the bridge, I stopped on a wide shoulder off the road and got out of the car. I looked at the river below and thought about Jason and Sadie in that horrible crash. It must have been a terrifying way to die, but at least they were together as soulmates. And maybe they were with me as I gazed at the pleasant river scene. Mother Nature has her way with things, he said. I guess he knows for sure. I was alarmed when I heard the loud noise of compression brakes behind me. I quickly turned to see a logging truck that had stopped, and a man looked at me through the window. Are you okay, ma'am? Just saw you there and thought, well, maybe you had car problems or something like that. No, I'm fine. Just looking at this peaceful sight. He waved and headed out over the bridge. Rummaging around in my purse, I found a quarter and threw it into the river after making a wish. I thought about Jason and Sadie and felt they were in a better place now. I'd been blessed by his presence yesterday, a meeting I will never forget. I turned and glared at the mountains and the trees, listening to the river behind me, and felt a warmth come over me. It was not from outside, but from within. It was not something I could describe, just a feeling that everything was all right. And maybe, just maybe, my heart and soul were aligned at last. End of story. Thank you very much.